Come on, be brave. Yes, thank you very much.
Should we be more worried if we have a son or a daughter starting?
We're talking about money, not dating, yes? Good. I don't think it delineates by gender particularly. I think it delineates by the individual. One of the great things about being a student life is fashion's actually change. Fashion being one of the most dangerous things in money. I don't like fashion. If we think about what fashion is a system set up by retailers of schmatter, of textile, whose job is to continually change so that our wardrobes are out of date. If there wasn't for fashion, you could buy your wardrobe at 23 and unless you changed weight, or unless it wore out, you would never need to redo it because it would always work. Unfortunately, the fashion industry, teen fashion, starts at the age of 11, tries to make us change our things all the time. That's one of the worries for some girls out there especially, but one of the great advantages of fashion, and it works for boys too, fashion is cross-gender. One of the great advantages of fashion at university is cheap fashion is good, cheap is chic. The other thing that we should talk about, and I quite like the fact that there are students' parents in here, is we should talk about drink and drugs at university. The LSE is not separate from any other university. There is drinking here, there's a student union bar and other bars. Drinking is going to go on for a lot of students. And there are drugs here, sadly. I don't think you should take them, but you might. And we need to actually think about this in a number of ways. I'll let somebody else do the health issues. That ain't my bag, so forgive me if you think I'm being irresponsible and not talking about it, but I'm not qualified to talk about it. I am qualified, and I'm going to stick with drink because it's slightly less emotional. I am qualified to talk about spending habits. One of the problems with alcohol is it has two costs. Cost number one, that'll be $2.50 for your pint, please. Cost number two, you lose your inhibitions. And when you lose your inhibitions, you spend more. Right? The problem is you might have 1 pint or 2 pints, but if you have 3 pints, you might have 6 pints. Because that's how it works. We suddenly become loose in our spending. Now, partying and drinking is an inevitable part of student life and should be budgeted and planned for. And you have to take some responsibility for yourself. The excuse, oh, damn, I spent 100 quid last night that I can't afford. I was drunk, I couldn't help it, is just not acceptable to the real judge of this, which is your pocket and your bank account. That is not an acceptable excuse. It will not buy you your meal the next day. It will not allow you to go out the next week. So I would say, boys and girls, it's important to consider partying as a cost. Put it in your budget. It's part of university student life. I started off by saying, you know, I learnt a lot when I was at university from the people I met. I also learnt a lot about how to socialise, how to get on with people, how to network, all core parts of our life. And drinking and going out and socialising is crucial. And actually, university is a great way to learn how to do it with a huge bunch of different people. But let's not it affect our pockets. If you're going to go out for the night, think about it properly. Make sure you go out there safe with friends if you're going to use this technique. And that's one of the good things. You might be doing it in your hall of residence. Only take a certain amount of cash with you to spend on drinks, but make sure you keep a separate pocket so you can get home safely. Start to set up boundaries so we can control our own behaviour so we look after our cash effectively. Didn't quite answer your initial question because I don't want to start getting into gender issues, but it's an important point that came out, I think. Any more, please? No hands. Not one question. Oh, hello. Transport. In London, walk, cycle. If you're in a hall of residence, almost all these halls of residence are in cycling ability. Please have an Oyster card. If there anyone who's coming in London who doesn't know what an Oyster card is, could just put your hand up and I'll explain it. Okay, right, very important. Oyster is the payment mechanism for the tube. It can also be used on buses. It was introduced by the Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone. He wanted to encourage people to do it. It's effectively a form of plastic cash. It's not like a debit card. You charge the card up. If you lose it, your money's gone. But importantly, to encourage people to use it, what he's done is set 2 tiers of pricing. If you don't have an Oyster card, you'll pay £3 or £4 for a single journey. If you do, you might pay £1.50 or £2. So you get your Oyster card, you charge up your Oyster card. If you're using the tube, you do it on your Oyster card or you're doubling the cost. It is not an excuse that, oh, I haven't got round to it. It is one of those things, if you're moving to live in London, the first thing you do is get your Oyster card, because you're going to need to move around. As for transport for the rest of the country, well, it's about being savvy and being aware. Right now, London to Manchester, you can book for £1 each way. If you go, they've currently got a special offer on. I'll tell you a story about trains, travelling around the UK on trains. It is the most complex system that has ever been devised. I'm actually trying to build something to break the train fare system on what I'm trying to tell you about. When we've looked into it, we need a research-based mathematician who can do, it's called walking the path mathematics, 6 industrial strength servers to try and crack the code, to actually break why train fares are cheap. Let me tell you, this is an anomaly. So you buy a ticket from London to Penzance, which is way down in the southwest of the country, return. Standard ticket, save a fare available, cost £220, return. Now, that train stops in Bristol. If you buy a ticket, London to Bristol, Bristol to Penzance, Penzance to Bristol, and Bristol back to London, 4 separate tickets rather than the return. 4 separate, same journey, same train, same time. £42. £42. It's called split ticketing. The tool we're trying to do will investigate these routes for you. Split ticketing is very important. You need to look at, sometimes 2 singles are cheaper than a return. Really, we get really clever on split ticketing, as you like that one. Let's go into a bit more detail. Peak time tends to end at 9 o'clock. You're doing a long journey across country. You're starting at 8:30. Your journey's 3 hours. You're buying a peak time ticket because you're starting at 8:30. Don't buy your 8:30 ticket, the first station after 9 o'clock, buy it up to there, and then buy an off-peak ticket for the rest of your journey. Same train. Buses, coaches, one of the cheapest ways to travel in this country. There's the mega bus, there's also the mega train fares, lots of really cheap ways to travel around. If you're flying into Europe, the key question to get really cheap costs on transport for flying into Europe is not what is the cheapest price because I want to go on the 19th of November. This is the key question if you want to do it really budget. I don't want to spend more than £10 on my flight, and yes, there are. At the moment, there are at least 10 destinations with flights to Europe for under £15 each way, right across lots of different countries, with at least 300 flights available with seats under £15 each way. Put a press release out on it the other day, funnily enough. Right, this is your question. I don't want to spend more than £10 or £15 on the flight. When do I go? We change what we delineate this on. We say, I'm a student, I'm flexible, I can go anytime. I will go when the price is cheap, not what is the cheapest price when I want to go. And that's what the tool on my website does, moneysavingexpert.com/flight checker. Simply, it finds you those flights. You say how much you're willing to spend. Have I missed any other area of transport? Cycling, I said, was good. Walking, please, if you've got a cycle, get a D-lock and a chain around your front wheel or they will disappear. This is London. It's a big city. People are very good. Everyone's a professional, including the thieves. Next question. Yes, sir.
On the basis of the LSE is located in probably the most expensive environment in the UK, what are your suggestions as to sort of trying to save the enormous expense involved in living in central London?
Transfer to Warwick University. It's dead cheap. Look. London is one of the world's great cities, and as such, there are lots of very rich people living here who push up the prices. If you can get into halls, you might get 1 year, you might get a bit more. I got 3. It's very good. Halls are quite cheap and quite effective. There's little ways to bring down the rent. Make sure you pre-plan when the end of this year, because most of you will be in halls as new students, make sure you pre-plan next year that you're going to be living in a house of 5 or 6, which brings down the cost quite substantially. But London only on the surface is an expensive city. There are many things to do and to spend time which aren't expensive. Some of the world's great museums are here, and they're all free. Transport is cheap if you get on a cycle. The Union Bar is not very expensive for going out, and there's food at the LSE, or you can go out and eat at a stock pot, or the Great Competition. Somewhere like Wagamama's for a night out works particularly effectively. We have quite a good transport system if you've got an Oyster card. You can't cut down the rent, you can cut down the council tax, but you might be able to bring down the rent if you think about who you're living with and where you're living. The answer to your question, in essence, is you have to embrace the fact you're in London and some things are going to be more expensive. But what your son or daughter, I'm guessing, what your son has that probably you don't have is time and free internet access and time to do the research. So parents, if they ask you, how, can I have some money to do this? Mantra number 3, can you find it cheaper? Ask them that back. Have they checked? Have you checked whether you can find it cheaper elsewhere? Because you often can. There's a great website, by the way, called London 2 for 1. You'll like this one as well. You like trains. Okay, it's a train tickets website for lots of things lots of days out in London, all the good stuff. If you're in London for the first time, embrace it like a tourist would. Why not? Now, it works like this. London 2 for 1 says, if you've travelled by train, we'll give you 2 for 1. So, because I did it with my girlfriend a few weeks ago, we went to London Zoo, just why not? It's quite nice to see some animals that don't work in banks. And luckily, these ones were behind cages. So we went, London 2 for 1 says you have to travel by train, but what that technically means is you have to display a train ticket. Now, if you buy your train ticket at Marylebone Station and you pretend you're going, I don't know, to Brixton or somewhere, train ticket, not tube ticket, it's about £1.60. Marylebone Station is right, which we drove to, is right by London Zoo. So we went into Marylebone Station, we bought the £1.60 tube train ticket. Now we have the train ticket, we'd printed the vouchers out from the 2 for 1. The London Zoo price is 14 quid a ticket, roughly. So we've now got 2 for 1, saving £14 for the cost of a £1.60 train ticket. Thinking through the logic, understanding how it works, but we also gift aided it to make sure London Zoo did as well as it possibly could on the charity tax back, because it is a charity and we do want to look after the cuddly animals. But the answer is, work it. Next. Yes? There is no such thing. No, not in a bad way. This happens, the same way there's no women drivers insurance and there's no old people's insurance. What there are is insurance companies who specifically target sections of our society saying, we understand students, so we'll give you the best price. Not really. It's the same way as they say, women drivers are safer, so we'll give you a better price. Well, actually, all insurance is based on actuarial risk tables and how much you want to encourage different types of customers. So it's not the women's only insurers who are necessarily cheaper for car insurance. All car insurers are cheaper for women. You just have to find the right one. So why I say there's no student insurance is you want, if you're talking about home insurance for a property, you want the cheapest home insurance property that covers your son or daughter while they are living in a house and they happen to be a student. Now, there are a couple of important things here. If you have a home insurance policy, you need to check whether your all risks cover, which involves things that you take outside your house, applies to your son and daughter whilst they're at university. Often it will. It's a little bit more expensive to get that, but you'll tend to find if you can work it so that you get your all risk policy to cover your son and daughter stuff while they're at university, the expensive stuff, and then they have a separate policy just with, a nice high excess just in case there's problems and things that you can't claim come from your house, like the wardrobe. That tends to be the cheapest way to work it. But you do it the same way as anyone else. You use screen scrapers, screen scraper comparison sites. A screen scraper, know what a screen scraper is? No, screen scraper is a type of website that does this. You put in your details, put in all your quote details, it takes that piece of information, it then goes to all the different insurers' websites, puts your information in and brings back the cheapest quote for you. There are 3 main home insurance screen scrapers out there. They're all commercial companies, so they search different ones. Use all 3 of those, put in your daughter's details, make sure your all risk policy is fine. You can find that on my How to Get Cheapest Home Insurance article, by the way, which will give you all the details of it. That's the cheapest way to do home insurance. Regulations in this country make it, unfortunately, very tough for anyone overseas to get a bank account easily. So we have to balance this 2 ways. First of all, we have to look at what is the best bank account for you, and then we have to look at which ones you're going to get. right? Now, we have to hope that the best one will give you what you need. Halifax Bank of Scotland gives the biggest interest-free overdraft. I would always recommend that unless you need a rail card, by the way, if you need a rail card, then it's NatWest, because they give you a 5-year rail card worth 100 quid, and that actually offsets the 0% overdraft if you're going to travel a lot by train. But I suspect not. So let's go back. Halifax Bank of Scotland will give you an interest-free overdraft of £2,750 a year. When you apply, you don't get it instantly. You might get £500 limit in the first few months, and then it gets bigger. Why choose on that? Because you may need to borrow money. Whose mobile phone? Whew. We'll talk about cheapest mobiles in a minute. Good way to ask the question. Now, interest-free overdrafts, £2,750 at the end of the year. If you don't need that, well, frankly, you set up a separate bank account somewhere else that pays you a lot in credit. Alliance and Leicester may do so, depending on your financial situation. You take the 2,750 quid that they're giving you and not charging you anything for it, and you go and earn interest on it elsewhere. There are lots of different choices, and you have to put it your own way. Actually, the services provided by the banks in this country are all pretty much of a muchness, unless you're very rich and go into private banking. There is one warning, though, that I should have said earlier, so I'm just going to move on to that because it's quite important. Make sure. Funny, a girl from Sweden who I met the other day was telling me that it's a very different system in Sweden, and I should say this especially to international students. In this country, if you go beyond your overdraft limit, the limit that they give you, you will still be able to pay for things. I know in some countries they stop. You have a limit of £1,000, you go beyond that, you can't pay. In this country, there are two limits. It was designed by the banks to make a lot of money from it. There's the paid limit and the unpaid limit. So let's say you're officially allowed to borrow up to £1,000. You will then be allowed maybe another £500 unauthorised, for which they will charge you a fortune, rub you blind and take every penny you have. Possibly £30 a day. A day. This is why I set up the campaign for reclaiming bank charges. It's those I'm talking about. You need to know your limit. Everybody, know your limit and make sure you do not go beyond it. Sadly, the institutions of this country are now making us wait for people to get their money back, the OFT and the Financial Services Authority. So you cannot get your money back at the moment. There's a hold in the courts. £1 billion has been brought back from the bank. 6 years of unfair bank charges have been reclaimed in the biggest consumer revolution this country has seen since there were riots over the poll tax back in 1991, and it's been stopped. Don't get me on this, because most of the people who've done it through my website, and it's been my great passion for the last year. So let me tell you this. What I can do now to save you having those charges is tell you, please, know your limit, know how much is in your bank account, and don't go beyond it. And if you want to know why I'm getting riled, I'm going off the subject, but hey, it's London School of Economics. We need to learn about money and the impact it has on people's finances. I will tell you the thing that made me get involved in the bank charges reclaiming before anyone had heard of it when I was first approached about it. And I'd say to those of you who'll go and work in banks afterwards, remember this story. Please, remember this story. You're not bad to be a banker, but there are bad bankers out there, and there are people who ruin lives. I met a woman who had 3 children. She had 3 children. She was on benefits because one of her sons was autistic, and she decided to care for him, which is cheaper for the state than sending him to be cared for by somebody else. So she wasn't working, single mother. She worked within a budget. She never went beyond the budget. She did not borrow money. She had very little money to live off, 100 quid a week for 3 children, something like that. One day, the Social Security office did not pay her money into her account as it normally did. She had direct debits set up to manage her money as she should do effectively. Those direct debits bounced because there wasn't enough money in accounts because there was an error in payment. Because of that, she went on 7 different transactions they bounced. That meant she owed £200. 2 weeks' worth of money for a woman who has nothing. Even though she had never spent beyond her means, because she could not afford to pay those bank charges, she get what more? What did she get? More charges. I met her a year after this. She was £3,000 in debt, having never spent more than she earned. That's why I warn you against bank charges, and that's why I say if you go into banking, and many of you will, and you'll be beautifully successful, and your parents will be proud, make sure you'll be proud of yourself by looking at the structures of what you do to people. Yes, your job's to make money off them, but let's not destroy lives. That's why I got involved with the bank charges campaign, and that's why one of my biggest warnings here as a student, they will love you but they will screw you. A bank is an organisation that will only lend you an umbrella when the sun is shining. So, the answer to you is choose your bank, but be careful. Understand how it works. Read the terms and conditions. Everything you do, the real way to engage with any institution is to understand how it works and how it makes its money. Once you understand that, you can start to challenge them. You're bright people. You know, this is one of the world's great institutions. You should be able to think it through yourselves. Sadly, being bright doesn't often save you. You have to be bright and do the work. The way that people decide whether they're going to lend you money and give you credit, people often talk about the term credit ratings. They don't exist in the UK. It's a myth, right? Each lender scores you based on its own criteria of whether it wants you as a customer or not. This gets very complex. You apply for a bank account, but it wants mortgage customers, so it scores you on whether you're likely to get a mortgage or not. And if you're likely to get a mortgage from it, it's more likely to give you the bank account, not depending on whether you're a good bank account customer or not. The problem is the way they score is based on what's called behavioural prediction. They want to predict your behaviour based on your past history. 3 pieces of information give them that. 1, any dealings you've had with them. You haven't got any. 2, your application form details. Well, we did well on this because you filled out an application form. 3, any past history of you, or perhaps people you're financially linked with, from the same address based on the credit reference information. See details at Equifax, Experian and Call Credit. You're not from this country, you haven't got any. So what they're saying is, who's he? Don't know. We don't know. Can we predict his behaviour? Can't predict his behaviour. High risk. Give him a high interest rate. That's effectively what you're stuck in. They don't know you, so they're going to get a high interest rate. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, I'm his dad.
Yeah.
I was with him. And I think the lady, she was new in the bank. And what she meant is 2.5 interest. That means they will give the interest monthly, not 2.5.
Cost. So not overdraft, in credit. In credit, 2.5 still isn't good enough. You can get a lot more elsewhere. So there's no one's giving you 2.5% a month interest. If they're giving you that, you need to come and talk to me and I'm hiring you. Right? If anyone's giving you 30% in credit interest, you know, the best paying bank account in this country at the moment generally is you can get Abbey 8% on the first £2,500 you're holding, 8% a year. So you can do better than that. But just actually the credit scoring thing's quite an interesting one, because you need to understand that that's how it works. They need to build your behaviour. And therefore, one of the things you have to do to build credit, and obviously we're talking about building credit wisely, is that you go and get yourself an expensive product because that's all they'll give you. You spend on it, generally a credit card, because then if you spend on it and pay it off in full at the end of the month, you don't pay any interest, even if it's expensive. And that way you start to build your credit history. And building your credit history starts to let them understand your behaviour and starts to give you access to more credit. But again, this all means taking care. Yes, sir? Oh, hold on. Let me do the gentleman at the back first, if I may. Mobiles. For what purpose? Apart from calling, obviously. Calling in the UK, calling abroad? Calling in the UK, very simple. Use one of the comparison services, One Compare or Money Supermarket. If you've got an existing contract, really important. You've got an existing contract, really, actually, great information for spreading the cost, thinking how money works. New and existing customers. When you call up your mobile phone company, digital TV provider, credit card provider, car insurer or home insurer, and you are near the end of your contract, you have suddenly grown to be 39 feet tall, massive and powerful and with huge weight, because they want to keep you as a customer. So you call up, that's a phone if you hadn't. Hello, hello. Hi, I'm coming to the end of my mobile phone contract. I'd like you to give me a better deal, please. I would like you to give me 1,000 cross-network minutes a month and 1,000 free texts for 20 quid. 20 quid? You can't have it for 20 quid. We're not giving it you for 20 quid. That's ridiculous. All right, I'm leaving. Put me through to disconnections, please. Now, we call it disconnections. They refer to it as disconnections, but all these companies do not have disconnections departments. They have what are internally known as customer retention departments. Absolutely true. Their job is to keep you, not to lose you. Hello, disconnections. Hi, I'm considering leaving because you won't give me a good enough tariff. No, don't leave, you can have the tariff. Maybe not quite that easy, but not far from it. When I first started going out with my girlfriend, I saw her mobile bill for 75 quid a month. It was disgusting. How dare you? So I said, right, on the phone, this is what you do. 6 minutes later, same company, same contract, same deal, 25 quid a month, £600 a year saved, same calls. Push your power as a consumer. It's a mature market, bit of economics again. We talked about, do you want to be a new or existing customer? Well, the mobile phone market in this country is mature. Virtually everyone has a mobile phone. How do you win customers? Well, you try and sell them more business and more different types of products and video text messaging and WAP and internet. Or alternatively, you win business off your neighbours, off your competitor companies and try not to lose business. So again, we can foist the competition by pushing them at the end of your contract. If you haven't got a contract, then you go through one of the comparison services. The first thing you do, though, two different ways of mobile phone tariffs in this country. First of all, there is the tariff, the price you pay per call, the price you pay per text. You should first look at what the cheapest tariff is for you. There are things called cashback deals on mobile phones, where what they do is they say, this is the tariff. You'll have a £40 deal, but if you claim back at 3 points over the year, we'll give you all the money back, so it's actually free. Hey! But you actually have to send the right form at the right time on the right day, or you don't get it. And there are more court cases about this than anything else I can tell you. So what I say is, yes, cashback deals are great, but choose one based on the applicable tariff to you. If I am going to make these calls and I'm going to pay the right price for them, which is the cheapest mobile phone provider for me? The comparison services will tell you that. At that point, once you know, you get the best cashback deal on that tariff. Because now we know if the cashback deal doesn't work, and odds are it won't, then you've still got the best tariff anyway, so you've not lost out. It's the people who go for the wrong tariff to get the cashback and don't get the cashback who are really losing out. So that's the answer. Yes, sir, you were going to give me a tip.
Just want to say those who are becoming employed for the first time through part-time work, etc., and paying tax, their allowance may not be fully used up.
Absolutely. Now, it depends. There are some complex rules on this. There's a myth that students or children, for that matter, don't pay tax. Wrong. You pay tax like everybody else. But you don't have to pay tax in the UK until you've earned £5,225 a year. I think I'm right. So, most students don't earn that, hence they don't pay tax. Not because they're students, but because they don't earn enough to pay tax. Now, if you're working just in the summer and you're not going to earn over that threshold, you can sign a form, you can go and get it, ask your employer, whoever's employing you, so that you're paid the money without tax being taken off, so you get all the money there and then. This is where you're going, I think, isn't it? Get all the money there and then. But if you're likely to earn more than that over the year, then, or it's not just a summer job, it's a regular job, then I'm afraid you're going to have to pay the tax on it and reclaim it at the end of the year. But do make sure you reclaim it. The likelihood is if you're paying tax in a job that you've got regular employment, you're going to be paying too much and you're entitled to reclaim it, so you need to look at it. I'm looking and I'm getting a nod there that it's time to finish. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful university career. Thank you. Thank you very much.